is this? Tabletop Island, huh? Let's see what this is all about.
Welcome to Tabletop Island. I'm Bernardo, your host, and today we're going to be taking a look at the vintage board game. Wait for it. Oh, this is kind of a bigger box. We have Spider-Man web spinning action game. This came out in 1979 and was produced by Ideal Games. This one is the Spider-Man game I like more than all of the ones I've played thus far. I know I recently just reviewed one which had a really neat component, but this one I very much enjoyed. Let's first take a look at the components. So first, I ended up buying this game sealed. Now you will notice it here that the spinner kind of has my own Sharpie drawn kind of symbols here. That's due to me actually losing the sticker because I got it sealed, which by the way, the game's really old, so the stickers ended up drying out on the back, so I ended up having to use double-sided tape to stick them. Now when I first pulled it out, I thought, wow, I'm gonna get it to the table. Ended up not, for that very reason. I needed to find a way to stick it, and I wanted to perfectly cut out with an X-Acto knife all of the excess double stick tape because I'm a perfectionist. Yes. And in the process of doing so, when I put it all in the box, somehow the spinner piece got lost somewhere, and I'm actually going to redesign one, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. Now, the board itself, setting it up, is a pain, and I don't wish this upon anybody. That is my least favorite part of this game. If you can get it already kind of built and put together, please do. Sealed ain't all that worth it for this game, I promise. Because when you end up getting these little plastic kind of flower spool locking mechanism things, you have a device that ends up pushing it in, and you find out later that pushing it in too far in is not good at all, but I'll get to that when I get to the gameplay because it'll be really crucial. Then you have this really awesome Spider-Man figure, which has this cool spool piece at the bottom that pulls a string from a little loop. We'll get to that in a moment too. And these villains, which are two solid colors. It is supposed to be Green Goblin, the Rhino, and the Lizard Man, because yeah, those were definitely the ones to choose. And the box design is really fantastic. It looks painted, and it really shows kind of the characters really nicely. I very much enjoy it. They definitely picked the characters I would appreciate, obviously the most common ones, but the detail on them, they're these really nice sturdy plastic, durable for children, but it's not really too detailed. So if you're looking for really detailed miniatures, this ain't the game for you, I'm sorry. But the premise of the game is one area of the players playing, I'm sorry, words are hard, is playing the villains, and the other is playing Spider-Man. Now, this game can play 2 to 4 players, so 3 people can be the villains, and then 1 person is Spider-Man. And then after each turn, you play in kind of rounds. And then you alternate till everyone's been Spider-Man, then the game ends. The person who scored the most points wins. What the premise of the game is you're trying to get these little plastic villains off to the edge of the board, on any edge of the board. Now, that sounds easy, but they can only move 2. You can either move 1 character 2 spots, or 2 characters 1 spot. Then, after they all move, you spin the spinner for Spider-Man, and Spider-Man moves across the board. Now, that's where these little star pieces that are coming out of the board are really important. Now, what happens is the loop ends up on one side of the board, and as you pull Spider-Man, there is a thread that comes around, and it's wrapping around. So the goal of this is to get the thread to completely make a triangle around the villain, and that will remove him from the game. Because you don't want them to score points because you're Spider-Man, and you don't want villains to get away because you're Spider-Man. You're Spider-Man. And it's such a cool element. Now, the reason why pushing those little plastic, again, flower-looking pieces down too far is because you have to be able to push Spider-Man, the little bottom piece of Spider-Man, into each thing. That way, it pushes the thread down into that, so it kind of locks in each spot. Because it's not really going around the corner of it, it's going through the middle of it, so it has to lock in place. Now, if you push it down too hard, you have no way of it actually keeping the thread in the spot. I found that out the hard way, and man, was it hard to get those pieces in. I'm still having nightmares. I'm not a fan at all. So when you end up having it at its sweet spot, which I hope you get there without having to set it up yourself, you end up pushing it through and it works so perfectly to where the thread catches in its area. And I'll tell you what, this is where I mentioned I'm going to make my own spinner, because I want to kind of balance it a little bit, because let me tell you, that spinner's a little broken. You have a 7, a 6, a 2, a 5, a 3, and a 4. Sounds pretty fair, right? But if you get a 6 or a 7, that is the most broken turn you're ever gonna have. Nobody is ever getting away from Spider-Man. That is absolutely insane. I thought, wow, they're just gonna keep getting away because if they're on the opposite end of the board. And then I spun a 6 and I was like, I just went across the whole board and I felt like I just wrapped around 2 dudes just in straight one turn. That's insane to me. Holy crap. It's definitely a game that I recommend playing with 4 players, to be honest, or at least 3, because as a 2-player game, I don't think you're getting away from me. I'm sorry, Spider-Man too strong. But the piece where I want to balance it is to remove the 6 and remove the 7. Maybe keep 1 6. I'd really have to play with that idea. That 6 just felt like cheating. I definitely think there should be a 2. I definitely think there should be a 3. I definitely think there should be a 4. And I definitely think a 5 is fair. Maybe I can rotate those a few more times and make another 4, another 2, and another 5. Maybe. I think that might balance it a little bit better, because I definitely think a 6 and a 7 just feels like absolute cheating, and you do so much on a turn just by pulling that loop. And I'll be honest with you, I wrapped that thing around the board a number of times. It's actually quite impressive that much thread fits in the Spider-Man, and it doesn't get too out of whack, because when you end up ending the game, you lift him up and you spin this little spinner piece, and that kind of puts in the thread. I'm sorry, words are just hard today. But that's definitely an aspect I think could have also changed. I really wish it was more mechanical to where it sucked back the thread automatically and kept it more taut. That way it definitely kind of worked better in terms of locking it into place, and it made cleanup a lot easier rather than just sitting there and spinning it until it all gets back in. Not the worst thing in the world, doesn't actually take forever as you would imagine it would, but it's still a pain and something I wish they would have done. But I'm sure a lot more of these games would have broke if that was even a mechanism into this game. But the game itself is extremely simple in that very aspect. Once you end up getting every villain out, either removed because of Spider-Man or they've escaped, the round ends and the next player becomes Spider-Man. Once everyone's been Spider-Man, the person who had the most escape points wins the game. Easy, right? And again, for the game itself, I didn't really see this in the instructions, but I actually collect points when you capture them as Spider-Man. I kind of breezed over the instructions. It was really poorly written, I'll be honest with you, because there was a whole bunch of things all over the place. And again, it really didn't explain how you got those flower pieces into the board, which was really where a lot of my focus was. One thing for sure, if you end up actually getting it sealed, set this game up before you get your friends to the table. I made the mistake of not doing so, and we sat there for a while setting it up, and it was a pain. But that is really my only complaint. I think the game is absolutely fun, and I think if you balance out the spinner, the game will be a lot more strategic and a lot more decision making as to what direction you would go as Spider-Man, and choosing what villains to go where to really kind of throw Spider-Man off his game, because he's Spider-Man. Components look great. The game I got for about $30. It was a bit high, but it was sealed, so I definitely jumped at the chance. If you can find a good deal, I highly recommend it, but it's not a game I would pay a lot of money for. So if this does sound like the kind of game for you, I do think it's a lot of fun if you can get it to the table, and again, if you have the board set up right, because again, it is a little kind of fiddly to kind of get it to where you want it to be. But once that's all done, the game is a lot of fun. There's a lot of quick moving, and it doesn't take a lot to play the game. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and has enough strategy to really make me feel like Spider-Man because I'm spinning the web around the board. But that's honestly all I have for you guys today. If you are interested in notifications, there is a bell up there somewhere. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I do appreciate any feedback. I'm trying to make these videos more and more outrageous, and with your guys' help, I have been doing so. Monday, regular board game reviews. Wednesday, weekly updates / talks, and on Fridays, my vintage board game reviews. That is all I have for you guys today. I'll see you guys next time.